I'm a bleeding heart, and I've, been appalled whenever I'd see like Israeli West Bank settlers harassing like, Palestinian olive farmers. It disgusts me. And I've been screaming like you need to arrest these people for years. And it's my dream, a two-state solution, these two people living in peace side by side, no longer with these wars, just sort of going their own ways. There's few things I want more in my lifetime than that. So that's where I'm coming from. But I'll tell you, Shaiel, I sort of had this realization about what you just said, where um they are saying Israel is the new Nazi Germany. Zionists are the new Nazis. And they'll say, it's so sad. The Jews became what victimized them. The Holocaust survivors from the displaced persons camp who went to Israel, who fought in the 1948 war for independence, many whom died in the they became Nazis, and how sad. And I realized that what was going on is there's like this. I don't know how deliberate it is, but it's like a three. And then I start seeing people posting stuff like execute all Zionists or no Zionists on campus. Or they'll put in Australia, Jerry Seinfeld has a poster for a comedy show, and somebody wrote Zionist dog over his face because he visited Israel. Uh, and I realized, okay, most Jews, I don't know what it is, 99, some people say 97%, but let's just say it's 90% of Jews. I guess under these people, you could classify them as Zionists because they're not anti-Zionists. So they turn 90% of Jews into, they're not Jews, they're Zionists. Okay. That's the first step. Once you embrace that, and the Zionists are bad, and then they say, well, the Zionists are actually, they're not just bad, they're the new Nazis. Okay, which means they need to be destroyed. Yeah, and maybe executed. And so it's like a three-step process. And at the end, these people are like, oh yeah, October 7th, when Gazans and Hamas shot little Israeli children in their bunk beds to death at point blank range. Um, that wasn't a violent anti-Semitic pogrom, the worst since the Holocaust. No, that was they'll say it's amazing. They'll say that was that was ghetto Jews during the World War II doing an uprising against Nazis. That little kid in the bunk bed, that Israeli kid in the bunk bed, is a Nazi, not a civilian. Uh, and it was like a shock. I think it's shocking to me.
Hatred against Jews, the desire to eradicate Jews, has been part of history for a very, very long time. One of the effects of the Holocaust and the generation after the Holocaust is that for a long time, that kind of openly violent anti-Semitism became unacceptable in at least in the Western world. And what we're seeing now is anti-Semites have developed a mechanism, which you illustrated very well, to change that, to make the violent hatred towards Jews, to make the desire to eradicate Jews as a people acceptable. They have a very powerful vehicle for that they've been building for many years. And we're in serious danger of that becoming mainstream because anti Semitism is something so deep in Western society. So this unlocks a desire that many people in the West have on the left and on the right to look at Jews that way. And this gives them a way to talk about slaughtering Jews, which perhaps they've always desired to do, with a moral platform that allows them to feel self-righteous and superior while they're doing it. And that's very powerful and alluring. So what we're seeing is incredibly dangerous and it's spreading.
But let's play this argument out because let me give you the response. This isn't about about anti-Semitism. We don't hate Jews. We just want Palestinians to have rights, equal rights. We're tired of them being oppressed for so long. We just want, shouldn't everybody have a, you know, rights of self-determination? Actually, I have a clip here because I think this is expresses it well. This is from the Left Reckoning podcast. The guy in the blue shirt's name is Matt Leck. He's like a producer, sort of co-host for Majority Report. This is his own show that he does with this guy, David Griscom. By the way, they're both not Jewish, not Arab, have no connection to the region.
Right.
And here's this is a good clip that I think many people would say to you.
But Pac-Man, I think it's very comfortable.
Oh, and they're attacking this YouTuber, left-wing YouTuber David Pakman, basically because he's not an anti-Zionist.
Right.
And so, but listen to this because it's sort of what people would say as a response to you.
With Israel's bombing campaign. Now he's going to say, oh, I want them to hit the targets. There is no way that you drop the amount of munitions that have been dropped on Gaza and you can sit here with a straight face and say, we are targeting military, military targets. Bullshit. Lie to sit there and say that. So you accept it. Now, in all of this fucking window dressing, well, I don't like the right wing in Israel. I would like it if the left came back to power in Israel. The left doesn't exist in Israel because Israel is a settler colonial state that is obsessively pursuing a goal of eradicating Palestinians, and denying them human rights within Israel, and then denying them the very right to life in Gaza and in the West Bank. That is what the reality of the Israeli government is, because it can never do what needs to be done, which is to pursue a one-state solution with equal rights for people regardless of their ethnicity or religion. Wow. What a fucking liberal concept, by the way. A democracy where people have equal rights and equal vote. That should be the kind of shit that liberals like fucking Pac-Man are able to uphold. But no, we're going to make an exception for this ethno-state, and we're going to cry and whine about the consequences of our support for that. Give me a fucking break. You either take the position that Israel has the right to exist as a Jewish exclusive state, as an ethno state for a certain group of people, right? You say, I believe in that. That means that you have to support, because if you say you're for one group of people having political representation, having access to land, having all those kind of things, you need to exclude the others. This is the natural end to that fucking project. And it has been that way our entire life.
Oh,
or
yeah, our parents. But.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Or you take the position that we should be pursuing a humane solution to this, which is a one-state solution with equal rights for human beings. And to sit here and whine about the right wing comes out of these kind of policies, just like in this country.
Okay. So how do you respond?
Well, the response that he's giving glosses over the internationally recognized and acknowledged solution to this conflict, which is a two-state solution. There's an elegant attempt to remove the two-state solution as a possibility at all there. It's either you have an ethno-colonial, oppressive apartheid state, or you don't have a Jewish state at all. There's no in between. There's no Jewish democratic state next to a free Palestinian state that provides self-determination. And there's a complete ignorance there to the fact that ethnic groups that fight each other for a very long time are better off separate from each other, especially in the Middle East. I mean, what happens to minorities that are hated in Middle Eastern countries? They get slaughtered, right? If we look at the poor Yazidis in Iraq, or we look at the poor Kurds, or we look at the Copts in Egypt, all the Christians that have left over the years, the Assyrians that have been massacred, the Maronites in Lebanon who had to undergo a civil war where they basically lost control of the country. It ignores the context in which all this exists, which is the Middle East, where the Arab Islamic countries have gone to extreme lengths to annihilate or at least neuter any community that's not Arab and Islamic. And it ignores all those things in order to make the point that the existence of a Jewish state is in and of itself immoral. So the argument that this person is making is inherently anti-Semitic and has to jump through hoops in order to make that anti-Semitic
Well,
argument.
I've never heard those two guys say anything like I don't think they're like anti-Jewish to any like Jewish American or anything like that. But I see your point. You wouldn't believe this. A PhD who is at UCLA now told me on the phone 2 months ago, Hamas is not anti-Semitic, and all they are seeking is to create a one state of equal rights.
Yeah. So we need to separate two things here. One is when you have an idea that is anti-Semitic that is being spread, and the other is a person
Right.
anti-Semitic.
Right.
Those are two different things. There are a lot of people who are spreading these ideas who are unbelievably anti-Semitic. And there are a lot of people who are receiving these ideas who are unbelievably anti-Semitic. There are others who simply don't know any better. I don't know about UCLA PhDs should definitely know better. Hamas has um, stated that its goal is a exclusive Islamic state and talked about slaughtering Jews, not Zionists, on many occasions. But yeah, but there is a strong element of ignorance here, just like in the MAGA sphere. There's a lot of people in the MAGA sphere who are not particularly racist. They just have been exposed to these ideas too much and have accepted these ideas too much, and those ideas are spread by white supremacists very often. It's the exact same thing. If your ideas were only palatable to a core true anti-Semites or true white supremacists, then they wouldn't be that dangerous. The trouble is you construct an entire alternate reality that looks feasible once you've been exposed to it too much.
But
And
but
that's what's happening here.
but let's play this out. I'll play what that guy would say. What do you mean I'm anti-Semitic? I want the Palestinians in the West Bank, the settlers move in, they're eating up the land. They don't get to vote in Israeli elections, but they're dominated by the outcomes of those elections. The Gazans live in this terrible conditions. We just want them to have the same rights as people in Tel Aviv. What's your response?
My response to that is that that's absolutely correct, and the solution to that is a two-state solution. If Israel continues to treat the Palestinians in the way that it's treating Palestinians, the results are going to be terrible. But you don't solve that by creating another injustice where you take Jews who are hated in the Middle East and put them at the mercy of Islamic terrorists who want to kill them. That doesn't solve the problem. That creates arguably a worse problem. What you want to do is solve problem, not get Jews killed. A one-state solution will create a state where there are two communities at loggerheads with each other that want to destroy each other. And it will not resolve the conflict. It will turn it into a horrific civil war, similar to what happened in Yugoslavia, if not worse. That's not a solution to anything. What you're trying to do by creating a dysfunctional, multi-ethnic civil war state is not solving anything. It's causing horrific suffering on both sides.
Okay, but I'll continue with this devil's advocate. Let me give you the sort of Hassan Piker response to that, which is, what what are you talking about? Palestinians are they just want a better life. They just want equal rights. They don't want to kill Jews. They just if it was one state of equal rights, that's all they want. They don't want to kill. Why is that so threatening to you? Go.
Palestinians have never had a leader who wasn't a genocidal terrorist who wanted to destroy Jews in the country. Whether we go back all the way back to the Mufti, who had an alliance with Nazi Germany, well before there was a state, an occupation, settlements, or anything like that. Whether we continue with Yasser Arafat or we continue to the current day Hamas, the leadership of the Palestinians, regardless of the situation, has always wanted to destroy the Jewish people there. Yasser Arafat was relatively benign when he said that any Jews who were in Israel before, in Palestine before 1918 could stay. That was according to the PLO charter. Um, Hamas calls specifically for an Islamic state. There are facts here. There are platforms that these parties have. If you read them, it's completely clear what they want. There's no talk of an actual equal state. There's talk of one that is dominated by Palestinians and by Islam.
But and I'll just continue to play devil's advocate because these are so pervasive. I think this is illuminating. But your own fellow Israeli, Avi Shalem, at Oxford.
Because of the history of my family and of the Jews of Iraq, when Muslim-Jewish coexistence was the everyday reality, was the normal thing, that experience enables me to think of a better future for our region than the one that we see today. And I believe that more and more people would come to see it this way, to see one state with equal rights as the only viable formula, and the only formula that would ensure security for Israel and safety for the Jews, because Israel was created as a haven for the Jews anywhere, but today Israel is the least safe place for Jews.
Avi Shalem at Oxford says Arab Muslims and Jews got along great. It was totally great coexistence before, and then the Zionists came, and then they're actually the source of this. And once you remove the Zionist thing, it's gonna be great coexistence.
Well, according to Islam, you can coexist, quote unquote, with people of the book, that's Christians and Jews, as long as they're dhimmis, as long as they're second class citizens. Before Zionism, um, the land of Israel was controlled by the Ottoman Empire, the Sultan of which was considered himself to be the Imam of the entire, the Caliph, I should say, of the entire Ummah of Islam. And he ruled in that name. So Jews had very few rights. And of course, under those circumstances, there was less of a motive for Islamic violence against Jews, even though there were the occasional pogroms in Palestine as well in the 18th and 19th century. But once the British took over and created a state where Jews, or created a mandate where Jews had as many rights as Muslims, that's when things immediately started going haywire. And in the 1920s, the British tried to create shared institutions where Arabs and Jews were together in municipalities, in healthcare, in parliament, in workers' unions, and the Palestinians refused to be part of those institutions. They had no interest in cooperating with Jews. What they wanted was a state dominated by Islam. And that continues to this day. Nothing has changed. So, yes, as long as the Jews in these countries are completely second class citizens, they're allowed to exist. But that's not something that Jews particularly want. They don't want to be at the whim of Muslims. And now, after decades of conflict, it would be a lot worse than that. Jews wouldn't even be allowed to be dhimmis necessarily. They would be slaughtered. Because remember, Jews were thrown out of all of their countries in 1948 because of the conflict. So there's really no scope here for a shared, democratic, multinational state. That's a canard.
Well, one person you can't say is not knowledgeable, and he definitely knows the subject and is a smart guy, is Peter Beinart. And I guess he would respond, no, I just want equal rights.
Well,
What do you
Peter
think?
Beinart doesn't run Hamas. It doesn't matter what Peter Beinart wants, and it doesn't matter what YouTube bloggers want. The people who have guns, who Israel is fighting, are Hamas, the Mufti, Yasser Arafat. They're not the people that exist in the imaginations of the American left wing. These are horrible, violent people, and the only way that they can be stopped is through the use of force.
It's funny, I made that same argument. I said, well, because people will do this thing all the time, whereas I want one state of equal rights. And they basically, a lot of these people basically they're the types that will call October 7th resistance and stuff. And it's sort of like, well, okay, that's your vision, but that's not Hamas's vision. I'll sort of point that out. And then it usually ends up, I'll just get replies like, doesn't matter. It's their land. The occupiers get what they get.
Ah, there
Yeah.
you go. And that's when the facade, the very thin facade of caring what happens to Jews disappears. It happens immediately. I've seen this so many times, exactly what you described. You're very good at diagnosing and analyzing these sort of online discourses. But you're really good at that. And you're
Thank you.
absolutely correct. Yeah, they'll immediately say, who cares about the occupiers? Who cares about the settler colonialists? Where will they go? They'll go to hell, right? When they say where will they go? That's what people say. There's a thin veneer saying we care about Jews and what their rights will be in order to convince, but it's very, very thin. There, and the reason for that is most of these people are concerned about the Palestinians only when and because they are in direct opposition with the Jewish state, right? We know that Palestinians, when they have plights in other countries, absolutely no one cares. Whether
I,
it's in Syria, in Lebanon, no one cares. Muslims get slaughtered in other places, no one cares. In fact, a lot of these same people support Muslims being genocided in China because China is on their side nominally. There's really very little concern here for the lives of Palestinians. The only people who care about Palestinians really are Palestinians. No one else cares. The rest of it is an absolute lie, in my opinion.
oh no, no, no. You remember all those protests when the US was bombing the ISIS and they killed tens of thousands of civilians. You remember when all the people shut down all the bridges, right? Remember that?
Of course I do.
Huge protests.
And they care more about that. There were more people in America who cared about that than say when China does it, you know, or when there's genocide in Darfur, or when there's genocide in Ethiopia. More people cared about that. There's very little caring in this world. There's very little empathy to other people who are suffering. There's a lot more hatred.
Yeah, and I feel like I have to say it's not a good place to be in the world, Gaza. There is real suffering there right now to children, which just happens because the Hamas has built these tunnels. And I don't want to for a minute suggest there isn't tremendous suffering going on in Gaza. I want to make that clear. But it's interesting. I'll tell you, Shaiel, I really want to have on these anti-Zionists. I would love to have on Peter Beinart. I'd love to have on Kyle Kalinske and Matt Leck, those guys I played, because I never hear the most basic questions asked to these people, because it astonishes me that the anti-Zionists, even the anti-Zionist Jews, and now there are a lot, and I'll tell you, some of the people I admire most, like Ben Lorber, I don't know if you know him, but he's a great journalist who covers the far right America. He's an anti-Zionist Jew. Super admire him. I don't want to cast aspersions just on this entire group. But I am astonished with the anti-Zionists. I don't even hear acknowledgement about, hey, we understand why Israel was created, because Jews were driven out of lands. I don't even hear that breadcrumb. And I never, ever hear even the anti-Zionist Jews, and I want to have them on my show so we can discuss it, which is a world without Israel. Let's talk about that, because it seems like, okay, get rid of Israel. The Jews are just back to 1939. They're just a helpless minority that just begs other people to help save them or their brethren, just waiting for the next social media era, Hitler, to go get them. No army, no way of self-defense. I never hear that discussion. Do you?
No, they don't care. They don't care what happens. Um, I think the main goal of many of the anti-Zionist Jews is to make anti-Semites think that they're one of the good ones, and also to feel morally superior. I think those two things reinforce each other. Thinking about what Jewish life would actually look like without Israel again is uncomfortable for them. And they would be culpable in it if that happened. So there's a certain amount of cognitive dissonance that goes into their positions. As for anti-Zionists who are not Jewish, many of them either don't think about that at all or think about it gleefully. That's what they want. They want Jews to feel that way. If you go to real pro-Palestinian circles in America and certainly in the Arab world, when you ask where will Jews go, they'll flippantly say Germany or Poland if you're lucky, and of course those are places they know Jews were slaughtered. That's why they pick them. That's very symbolic. Or they say we don't care. I've seen a lot of pro-Palestinians say they can go to Gehenna, go to hell.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's
Gleeful.
definitely true. There are lots of anti-Semites that just use anti-Zionism as cover. But I mean, when I look at like Peter Beinart or Owen Jones, maybe I'm just foolish, but I don't think Owen Jones, say what you want about him, I don't think he's like a closet stormtrooper, you know? I mean, do you? I mean,
I don't know him enough to tell you. But like I said, there are well-meaning people who have bought this ideology hook, line, and sinker. And then here's the thing about our current social media universe. Once you take a stand, you are kind of forced to take it. You become part of a tribe. If you betray that tribe,
right.
you lose your followers. I'll give you an example. I'm on a much lower level of followers than Owen Jones, but I just had that experience yesterday. Yesterday, I posted something about Joe Biden. I said that I think Joe Biden is getting old and his cognitive uh, abilities are not what they used to be, and a lot of this criticism is correct. The pushback I got, because I'm considered like the pro-Biden Zionist guy, that's sort of my niche. The pushback I got was so severe that I ended up deleting it, honestly, because I didn't want to deal with it. I still agree with what I said, but when you're someone like Owen Jones who has that kind of following, when you see information that you don't that doesn't completely agree with the worldview that you've constructed, you can't really fully engage with it. You have to continue to lead your tribe. You're kind of stuck in a way in these realities, in these ideological positions. So I don't know about him specifically, but I think for a lot of people, they're so invested in this that they hide the uncomfortable truth. And Zionists, we do this too. So many of us, and I've been guilty of this too, don't look at the suffering of people in Gaza as much as we should because it makes us very uncomfortable. That's sort of the chink in our armor in defending Israel is what's going on in Gaza. And I think that people who are anti-Zionist experience a lot of that too. There are clear problems with their position that they're aware of. They see their comments. Their comments are full of Nazis agreeing with them, full of people saying that you should gas all Jews agreeing with them. They know all that, but they can't withdraw. They can't go against that because that's where their tribe is. So there's a lot of things going on here. It's much more complex than good and evil. Ultimately, we're social creatures and we bow to social pressure.